No, I was serious. I was just checking out something in this book. I read it a few days ago. It's so well done. It's called West Nile Diary. Kathleen Gibson is the author, and it's a story of her husband Rick and his ongoing battle with West Nile neurological disease, and her own battle in terms of being right there for him in every kind of situation over the last few years. So welcome.
Thank you.
Great to have you here, and good to see you sitting there.
Thank you.
I mean, there was a time when rolling over in bed was something you had to relearn, let alone sitting, walking, thinking.
Had to learn it all.
You had to learn it all. You know, I was thinking of you when I saw that little bit from Walter Gretzky, you know, after he had his aneurysm, having to learn how to do everything all over again.
Yes.
Now, in your case, West Nile really had a serious impact. Not everybody has neurological West Nile,
That's
right?
right. Yeah. Actually, very few who get West Nile will get the neurological form.
Thank
God.
Yeah, you had meningitis, you had encephalitis, you had poliomyelitis.
Yes.
Myelitis?
Yes.
I mean, this was a perfect storm. Tell us about it.
The mosquito, it brought such devastation that with the encephalitis, it was difficult to have any lights, the sound. I couldn't handle sound at all. If 2 or 3 people were in the room talking, my brain would shut down. The meningitis part, it's caused central nervous system damage throughout my body. And the poliomyelitis has made me what's called a triplegic. Paralysis in 3 of my limbs, and it's not fully returned. I've lost the ability to do a lot of things.
I've never heard that term before, triplegic.
It was a new term for me. I had heard of paraplegic and quadriplegic, but there's the triplegic, meaning that 3 of the quadrants of the body have been affected.
Now, Kathleen, this all started with a simple mosquito bite.
It did. We don't really know where or exactly when, but we know that it was a mosquito.
Now, in your book, you say it took a while for the doctors to really analyze what was going on.
It did. West Nile is still a pretty new disease in North America, and it can mask a lot of symptoms or masquerade like a lot of other diseases. And so, of course, they wouldn't suspect it. They thought it was a sinus infection or a bad flu from the beginning.
Now, it's West Nile. They tell you to look out for dead birds, right? Say if you see a dead bird, suspect something that
Yes.
it might be West Nile. But animals get it as well as human beings. In fact, you mentioned a couple of prize horses that someone mentioned to you while you were going through this.
Yes, I was in hospital, and actually it was one of the lowest points in my experience. I was very depressed and wondering what was going to happen. And Kathleen had met a young man, and they had this conversation and found out that I had West Nile. And so he came into the hospital room to visit me, and he brought in a little vase with a couple of carnations on it, plopped it down on the table in front of me and said, "This is from me, my wife, and our newborn son." Then he handed me a poster that had 2 horses on it. And he just looked at me and he said, "Sir, if you ever get discouraged, I want you to look at these 2 horses." And then he told me that both of those horses were his. Both horses in the year 2000 had West Nile. And how he had to build soundproof stalls. He had to hang the horses because if they go down on the ground, they wouldn't die. They would die and never get up. How he rented a therapeutic water tank and put these horses into it every day and made them walk. And then he put his hand on me and he said, "Sir, you've got to have faith, trust God, and pray." And my wife looked at him and said, "Sir, are you a believer?" And he said, "Yes, ma'am. I'm not as good as I should be, but I'm better than I was." And so my wife asked him to pray for me. And at first he said, "Oh, I couldn't do that." And Kathleen said, "Well, sir, if you're a believer, you can pray for my husband." So he put his hand out and he put it on my right leg and just prayed a very simple prayer. When he was finished, the tears were rolling down my face and rolling down Kathleen's. And she said, "Sir, do you know what my husband does for a living?" And he said, "No, ma'am. I've never met your husband before. I have no idea what he does for a living." And she said, "Well, my husband's the pastor of the Nazarene Church just around the corner from the hospital here, and he's the president of the ministerial here in town." This young man, the blood drained from his face, a hand went up over his mouth, and he started backing out of the room, and he said, "Oh my God, I've prayed for a pastor." My wife called him back in and said, "Sir, you don't know, but ever since we was bit by this mosquito and we've been in hospital, we have prayed every day, Lord, give us strength to get through today and hope for tomorrow." And this morning we woke up without any hope. And we believe that you have been God's messenger of hope to us.